Okay, so now for step two, for the local. So this is only for students who are going to have their environments on their local system. And I'm going to show you using a Mac. Sorry, I'm going to show you using a PC. I personally use a Mac, so I did give some instruction here for the Git part. And so remember, we were on GitHub before. So now we actually have to install the local companion to that, which is installing Git. So for Mac students, I've given some other content here to help you through with that. But personally, I have just, because I had to do this recently, I just used Xcode to do it. And why might it be a little more complicated is that some people use something called Homebrew. I prefer not to. But I've noticed most students, although it is varied these days for sure. And then if you're using Linux, all these programs work on there, but I don't cover that installation as well. Reach out if you need help. So I already have open VS Code, so that's the editor we're going to use, and Git, which I was talking about before. So when I went to here and I went to download, then it automatically downloaded the file. And then I went to the other link, which is Git, it went to here. And for my operating system, which is probably most of a relatively new Windows, it's a 64-bit. I know that's probably a little hard to see there. 64-bit Git setup. So now this is actually a fresh install. So I'm going to walk through installing them. And then the last thing I'll do is actually show you how to set up the folder. Okay. Because if you're taking more than one course from me, you want to have a base folder that you have all of these repos in. And even if not, just as a way to organize it. But I don't see your local system. You can do it however you want. It's just how I've noticed over time it works best for students. So I'm going to come into my File Explorer, and in this case, in my downloads to see that I have the VS Code. So let me go ahead and step through the install there. We should all be reading every bit of this. We could have AI do it to make it a little more user friendly these days, but understanding what we're agreeing to is important. VS Code is a very popular program used by, it's mostly the industry standard these days. So there's a couple of options here. Creating an icon if you want it. I think that's a good idea. Add open a code with Windows Explorer. That's really up to you. And add to the path, generally required here. And then I'll just go ahead and let it install. So this is the code editor that we'll be using. Again, even if you happen to be over on a CodeSpace, it also is VS Code. It's just web-based. So this is completely local, and looks like the install is going pretty quick. And we'll go ahead and hit finished. All right, so that opens up my VS Code in a pretty small window. And then we'll learn more about this as we go through. So we'll come back here in a few minutes. For now, I'll just minimize it. So the other install is the Git. This may have a couple more steps. So let's walk through this one. Let's see, I haven't had to do this one in a while. Yes, I'll minimize this stuff so you can kind of see. Okay, we're going to install here. And so what it's doing, oh, it looks like it may have had a previous version. That's interesting. Sometimes now, because Git is so popular, they pre-install um, software. And actually, VS Code has been known to ship with parts of Git installed. Nothing you need to know, just FYI as we're watching the install happen. Okay, great. So there really wasn't anything there. Let's see if we have any. Oh, it used to be several more options here. I don't need to look at that, and I'm not going to launch Git Bash, where I'm going to show you how to use the Git Bash inside of VS Code. So we're really working in one environment. So we'll go ahead and hit finished. Great. Okay, that wasn't too bad. So now I'm going to open up VS Code again. I'm going to go to Terminal. I'm going to go to New Terminal. And this I'm going to also make a little bigger. And so this is the getting started. I'm going to go ahead and drop that out for now. Good stuff to read and understand. So in this case, what happens is by default, the terminal, and you'll learn about this as we move through the course, but for Windows, it defaults to PowerShell. But if you click here, you can also get Bash. And Git Bash is what I recommend for most students. I believe PowerShell should do this as well, but I just think using Git Bash is a better interface because it's a more commonly used one. But if you're comfortable, you can use whichever one you want. So now that I'm here, I can do this command, git dash dash version, version, and it'll tell me. And the reason I'm running, this is a command line command. So git space dash dash version tells me my GitHub is installed, which is awesome. Okay. All right. So I have all the installed software, but I'm going to do one more step before we move on, which is I'm going to create the folder, the base folder. And so I'm going to minimize this inside my Windows environment. Now I have a choice about where I'm going to put my base folder. Okay. Now, it kind of makes sense to put it in documents, right? Some people like to put it on their desktop depending on what else they have in there. And because I use it all the time, that's probably where I might put it, but you can really put it wherever you want, okay? I'll put it in documents this time, but typically it depends on where I'm. This is not a machine I use all the time, so it's not one I would think of using. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to create a new folder, okay? There's various ways in here. You can create new and then create folder. I mean, in Windows, there's always, 10 different ways to do the same thing, which is kind of cool. That's why people often use Windows very differently. So let's go ahead and do that new folder. And this is where I recommend this base folder. I already clicked off of it, so I'm going to have to come back in here and rename it. So CIT. And in this case, what I recommend is CIT to start with, and then whatever course. Now, I've been using 93 as a demo, but it could be for you, again, not likely 28 because we don't use local, but for 82 you would. And then I specify the semester. Okay. Now, in this case, it looks like it's kind of being finicky on my keyboard, which is not a big deal, but I'm going to rename. It's always, oh, there it is. Okay, so I'm going to use this. I'm going to now say the semester, so SP 25. Okay, now why do I like that? Okay, I like this folder option because it tells me what course it was and it tells me the semester I took it in. And it just is to me, an easy way to do that. Now, the last step I'm going to honestly do before we finish is I'm going to close out of here. I'm going to come back to VS Code. And now in VS Code, I'm actually going to open a folder and I'm going to open that folder. So I put it in documents. So I would click this. Now I could just double click here. Oh, actually, no, I just click one time and click select folder. And one of the things that VS Code will do right now is it'll say, hey, do you want to trust this author? You want to trust this? Because basically we're going to be doing some coding and I just want to make sure I trust the author. And so I trust the author of all the files in the parent folder of documents. And I'm going to say yes. Okay. So one thing you could do is kind of look at some getting started with customizing your environment. That's always fun. Where you come over here to themes, right? You go to like a color theme and you play around with which kind of color theme you would want. Make sure you know how to get into, because we're going to end up cloning in the next step, the repos. But in this case, make sure you know how to get in and open up the terminal. There it is. I was like, where's terminal at? And also, learning keyboard shortcuts is not a bad idea. So notice it goes back to PowerShell. So in the next video, I will show you how to default, which I might be able to do it here. If I go, well, actually, let's do it. Let's go to here and go PowerShell. And can I tell it to, yeah, I guess I'll have to do a little more looking around to figure out where to tell it to default. Okay, maybe Git Bash. Oh, let's see if that worked. Okay, so what I did there is I went here and let's see if it worked before I tell you to go do it. So I'm going to close the terminal. I'm going to come back here, open the terminal, and it came to Git Bash. So that's awesome. I didn't have to wait to the next video to show you. Again, if you want to use PowerShell, that's up to you. I know that this works with the Git commands you're going to need for the next video. All right, hope this helps, and I'll talk to you later.